In the 2015 climbing season, I started out with the goal of attempting to climb Everest without using supplemental oxygen and using minimal support. On April 25th, a catastrophic earthquake hit Nepal, killing more than 7,000 people and killing 16 people at Everest Base Camp. All my goals changed that day. It's really, really hard for me right now to reset my mind towards a different reality, one that exists with, a country that I love that's absolutely devastated right now in a way that's still hard for me to understand. From everything I can hear, it just sounds like, especially here at base camp, it was like war. Oh no, there's no kitchen. We went up to base camp the following day, and it was just unbelievable to see this ribbon of devastation that had come directly through the middle of camp. We walked through what seemed like a minefield of just broken tables and tattered tents and boot liners and computers and, people's personal stuff just strewn about the glacier.
Base camp is a place we consider safe. About April 25th, something that I have never expected happened. We arrived at base camp, and then suddenly the floor started shaking pretty bad. And a few seconds later, scream, avalanche, and it was bizarre. It was just the most bizarre thing, terrifying thing I ever saw in my life. I can only compare it to some effect on some movie where you see this gigantic mass of 3,000 feet coming straight off you above your head.
I feel like in that moment and in the days after the earthquake, 90% of what I was thinking about was how to protect my team and how to make the best decisions for them. I heard stories from my friends who were treating patients about people with head injuries and so much blood everywhere, and people losing eyes and losing limbs, and people dying in front of you. If I was alone by myself, I might have just raced back up to base camp and went in as a responder, knowing that I could actually provide medical care for people up there and the risk would be worth it. But the weight of rushing 4 people into a disaster zone where potentially they could be killed when you were sitting in a safe area, I couldn't make that decision. John Mancuso came with me on this climb as the high-altitude photographer and videographer, and he's been with me every single step of this entire journey, from my training at home in Sun Valley, Idaho, all the way in trekking into Everest Base Camp, and then beginning this climb.
The earthquake was so bizarre and such an unexpected thing that I don't think it was really something any of us had really thought could happen or really knew how to prepare for. Just listening to a woman who had just become a widow find out that her husband died, and she was wailing, and it was something that I just had never heard before in my life, and I remember just feeling the sense of desperateness and grief, and thinking about my family and about the people who I love, and sort of being thankful that we were where we were.
From the accident this year at Everest Base Camp, there was 11 local workers who were killed, and to be able to support their families, we need $155,000. In addition to that, we're continuing to support 21 other families, which we have to fundraise for every single year. And I started the Juniper Fund in 2012 to provide financial support for workers' families who were killed while working in the mountains. And we want to pay these families. We want to keep this commitment to provide support for them financially as they get through this period of grief and sort of find their feet again. The thing that's so unbelievable about Nepal is how resilient the people are. But I think it's also going to take a long time for the country to regain stability. They are going to face huge issues with tourism and people feeling that it's safe to come into Nepal and go trekking or go climbing. And Everest is just this tiny island in that country. And to think that being on or around that mountain is something that, we shouldn't do anymore, that it's some sort of omen, I don't know, I just don't feel that. I just really don't believe that.
My biggest objective this year with her was to tell a positive story from Everest. And I think that that story is far from finished, and I think that Melissa is gonna complete it. And I do believe that I will go back. I want to finish telling the story.
Selflessly, I just want to try to help as many people as I can right now. But selfishly, I'm a little sad that, I can't pursue my dream right now. It's hard for me to even admit that. It's hard for me to say that, but it's the truth of how I feel. It really is. It'd be dishonest if I just said, instantaneously when I heard that there was this devastation, I just abandoned all my thoughts of my own personal goals, because I don't think that's how we work as humans. I think we attach ourselves to things.
We all can set up goals and papers. Say, we're going to do this. But, our destiny plays a different things. So I know then she has the mental ability to do it. And she will be back. In the future, we'll see her standing on the top of Everest without that oxygen mask and with a big smile.
My biggest fear is that we have been paying attention to this devastating earthquake, and in another week, we're all going to forget that it happened. And there's going to be people for years that are going to need support. I'm just so committed to trying to find a way to do that. And I think, that it is a new purpose, and we need to continue to provide support as long as we possibly can. The Juniper Fund provides financial support directly to families who've lost a worker while working in the mountains. To contribute, go to www.thejuniperfund.org.